There is a particular silence that arrives when the day ends and you are left alone with what you did not do. It is not the silence of peace or rest. It is the silence of recognition, where you cannot escape the knowledge that another day has passed and the person you promised to become remains a ghost, waiting somewhere in tomorrow. You know this silence well. You have lived with it for years, perhaps decades, and it has become so familiar that you barely notice its weight anymore. But the weight is there, accumulating like dust on forgotten furniture, making everything in your life feel heavier than it should. The most devastating betrayals do not come from others. They come from the small promises you make to yourself in the morning and break by noon. Each time you say you will begin, you will change, you will finally take control, you create a contract with your future self. And each time you break that contract, you do not just lose a day. You lose a piece of your belief in your own word. This is how trust erodes, not in dramatic moments, but in these quiet surrenders that no one else sees. What makes this particularly cruel is that you remember who you were before this pattern took hold. There was a version of you who believed in possibility, who felt capable of transformation, who looked at challenges as opportunities rather than threats. That person is not dead. They are exiled, pushed to the edges of your consciousness, where they watch you scroll through another evening, postpone another goal, avoid another uncomfortable truth about what your life has become. Carl Jung understood something profound about human nature that most motivational speakers miss entirely. He knew that when we fail to live up to our potential, we do not simply feel lazy or unmotivated. We feel fraudulent. We sense that we are living as an imposter in our own life, wearing the costume of someone we were meant to be, while knowing we are not actually that person. This creates a psychological split that runs deeper than any external failure could. You have been trained to think of discipline as something you must force upon yourself, like pressing weight against resistance. But this understanding is backwards. Discipline is not something you add to your life through willpower. It is something that emerges naturally when you stop identifying as someone who lacks it. This distinction matters more than you might realize. As long as you see yourself as an undisciplined person trying to become disciplined, you will always return to what you believe yourself to be. Consider how you move through your day. You wake up already defeated, already anticipating the negotiations you will have with yourself. Should you get up now or sleep another 20 minutes? Should you exercise or skip it just this once? Should you work on what matters or drift into what feels comfortable? These are not really choices. They are performances of a script you wrote long ago, where you play the role of someone who always chooses the path of least resistance. But here is what no one tells you about that path. It does not actually lead to rest. It leads to exhaustion of a different kind, the bone-deep tiredness that comes from carrying the weight of your own disappointment. You are not tired because you work too hard. You are tired because you work against yourself, spending enormous energy suppressing the part of you that wants to rise, build, create, and become. This suppression is not passive. It requires constant effort to hold down your potential, to convince yourself that tomorrow will be different while ensuring it never is. You have become remarkably skilled at this form of self-sabotage, creating elaborate justifications for why now is not the right time, why you need more preparation, why you should wait until conditions are perfect. These justifications feel like wisdom, but they are actually fear dressed in reasonable clothing. The tragedy is not that you have failed to achieve your goals. The tragedy is that you have succeeded in avoiding them. You have built an entire life around not becoming who you are capable of being, and this life requires maintenance. It requires you to stay busy with distractions, to fill your hours with urgent but unimportant tasks, to surround yourself with noise so you never have to sit in the silence where your true self waits. This is why discipline feels so difficult. You are not just trying to change your habits. You are trying to overthrow an entire kingdom you have built to protect yourself from the responsibility of your own potential. Every part of your current life is arranged to support your smaller self, the one who makes no demands, takes no risks, and therefore cannot fail in any meaningful way. But this protection comes at a cost you may not have calculated. When you avoid discipline, you do not just avoid effort. You avoid encounter with your own depth. You never learn what you are truly capable of, what reserves of strength exist within you, what it feels like to surprise yourself with your own power. You remain a stranger to the best parts of yourself, knowing they exist, but never allowing them to emerge. The disciplined self you have exiled is not angry with you. He is patient, eternal, waiting. He knows something you have forgotten, that discipline is not punishment, but reunion. It is the practice of becoming whole again, of gathering all the scattered pieces of yourself and arranging them in their proper order. When this happens, effort becomes effortless, not because tasks become easier, but because you stop fighting yourself while doing them. This is what Jung meant when he spoke of individuation, the process of becoming who you truly are, rather than who you have learned to be. It requires courage, not the courage to face external challenges, but the courage to face your own possibility. Most people never find this courage. They live their entire lives in the shallow end of their own existence, never diving deep enough to discover what swims in their depths. You have a choice to make, not tomorrow, but right now in this moment. You can continue rehearsing weakness, practicing the same patterns that have brought you to this point of recognition. Or you can begin the return journey to yourself, to the disciplined, capable, powerful version of you that has been waiting in exile. This journey does not require you to become someone new. It requires you to remember who you have always been beneath the layers of learned helplessness. The path back begins with a simple recognition that may feel overwhelming in its implications. You are not lazy. You are not broken. You are not incapable of change. You have simply been practicing the wrong identity for so long that it feels real. But practice can be changed. Identity can shift. The exile can end whenever you decide to stop guarding the gates that keep your true self locked away. The story of how you became undisciplined did not begin with a decision. It began with a wound, probably so small and ordinary that no one noticed it happening, including you. Perhaps you were 7 years old, excited about something you had created, running to show someone who mattered, only to be met with indifference or criticism. Perhaps you were 12, trying to establish some control over your life through routine or structure, only to have it mocked or dismissed as silly. These moments seem insignificant from the outside, but they create fractures in the developing psyche that determine how we relate to our own power for decades to come. What happens in these moments is not just disappointment. It is a lesson about safety. The child learns that enthusiasm leads to humiliation, that structure invites judgment, that showing up fully in your own life makes you a target. So you begin to develop strategies to protect yourself. You learn to hold back, to avoid full commitment, to always keep one foot outside the door so you can escape if necessary. These strategies work beautifully for their intended purpose. They keep you safe from the specific pain of having your discipline rejected or ridiculed. But safety and growth cannot coexist. The same strategies that protected you as a child now imprison you as an adult. You have become so skilled at avoiding the vulnerability of full commitment that you cannot access the power that comes with it. Every time you try to establish discipline in your life, you are not starting fresh. You are confronting every ghost who ever made you feel foolish for trying, every voice that told you to stay small, every moment when structure felt like exposure rather than strength. Jung wrote extensively about what he called the shadow, the parts of ourselves we reject or hide because they seem dangerous or unacceptable. But what most people misunderstand about the shadow is that it does not only contain our darkness. It also contains our abandoned light, our repressed nobility, our exiled strength. The disciplined part of you, the one who craves order and structure and meaningful effort, has been pushed into the shadow, not because it is bad, but because it once made you vulnerable. Think about the archetypes that live within every human psyche. The king who creates order and maintains boundaries. The warrior who faces challenges with courage and persistence. The magician who transforms raw material into something valuable. The lover who commits fully to what matters. These are not just metaphors. They are psychological realities, patterns of being that exist in potential within you. But if these archetypes are wounded early, they do not disappear. They invert. And thence, the wounded king becomes the tyrant or the weakling, either controlling everything rigidly or abdicating all responsibility. The wounded warrior becomes the bully or the coward, either attacking without purpose or avoiding all conflict. The wounded magician becomes the manipulator or the fool, either using knowledge to deceive or refusing to learn it all. The wounded lover becomes the addicted or the impotent, either consuming without satisfaction or unable to connect at all. Your undisciplined self is not lazy. He is a wounded warrior who learned that fighting for yourself leads to defeat. He is a wounded king who discovered that creating order in your life invites chaos from others. He is a wounded magician who found that transformation makes you strange, different, alone. These wounded archetypes are not your enemies. They are protectors who have been standing guard for so long they have forgotten what they are protecting you from. This is why willpower fails. You cannot defeat a protector with force. You cannot overcome a guardian with aggression. The more you attack your undisciplined self, the more threatened he feels, the more rigid his protection becomes. He will sabotage every attempt at change because he genuinely believes he is saving you from something worse than stagnation. He is saving you from the remembered pain of being seen, judged, and found wanting. The path forward is not through war, but through integration. You must speak to these wounded parts of yourself with curiosity rather than judgment. Ask your lazy self what he is protecting you from. Ask your distracted self what he is helping you avoid. Ask your procrastinating self what danger he sees in completion. The answers may surprise you. They may reveal fears you did not know you carried, wounds you thought had healed, beliefs about yourself that you inherited but never chose. One man discovers that his inability to maintain discipline comes from a deep fear of surpassing his father, who always seemed threatened by his success. Another realizes that his procrastination is protecting him from the possibility of giving everything and still failing, which would destroy his secret belief that he could succeed if he really tried. Another finds that his lack of structure is actually a rebellion against a childhood where every moment was controlled by others, where discipline meant submission rather than power. These discoveries are not excuses. They are maps. They show you where the real work needs to happen, not in your habits, but in your relationship with the parts of yourself you have been fighting. When you understand what your resistance is protecting, you can address the root fear rather than battling the symptom. You can reassure the protector that the danger has passed, that you are no longer a child who needs to hide your power, that it is safe now to be disciplined, structured, focused. But integration requires something most people are unwilling to give. It requires you to feel the original pain without immediately escaping into distraction. When you sit down to work and feel that familiar pull toward your phone, that is not just habit. That is a young part of you, remembering what happened last time you concentrated too hard, cared too much, tried too sincerely. If you can stay present with that discomfort without judging it or escaping it, something profound happens. The protector realizes that danger is not current. The wound begins to heal. The archetype starts to transform. The king awakens from his slumber and begins to create order not from tyranny, but from wisdom. The warrior rises not to attack, but to defend what matters. The magician emerges not to manipulate, but to transform. The lover commits not from desperation, but from devotion. These archetypes have been waiting within you, not dead but dormant, requiring only your recognition and invitation to return. This is the secret work of discipline. It is not about forcing yourself to wake up early or follow a routine. It is about healing the split within your psyche, reuniting the parts of yourself that were separated by pain, fear, or misunderstanding. When this reunion happens, discipline stops feeling like effort. It becomes expression, the natural manifestation of a unified self who no longer wastes energy on internal civil war. You may think you need more motivation, better systems, stronger accountability. But what you really need is integration, wholeness, peace between the warring factions of your psyche. Once that peace is established, once the protectors become allies rather than saboteurs, you will find that discipline flows naturally. Not because you have conquered yourself, but because you have finally stopped fighting yourself. The wounded parts of you are not obstacles to your discipline. They are the doorway through which you must pass to reclaim it. Every resistance contains information. Every avoidance holds a key. Every moment of self-sabotage is actually an invitation to go deeper, to understand more fully what you are made of and what made you. This is the real work, the sacred work, the work that transforms not just your habits, but your entire relationship with your own potential. The hardest conversation you will ever have is the one where you forgive yourself for the years you spent running from your own possibility. This forgiveness is not soft or sentimental. It is surgical, precise, necessary for the amputation of shame that has been poisoning your system for longer than you can remember. You have been carrying the weight of every failed attempt, every broken promise. Every morning you chose comfort over growth, and this weight has become so familiar that you mistake it for part of your identity. But shame is not fuel. It never has been. Shame is a parasite that feeds on your potential and leaves you exhausted, convinced that you deserve the emptiness you feel. The mature man understands something the wounded boy cannot. Forgiveness is not about excusing the past, but about reclaiming the energy you have been spending to punish yourself for it. Every moment you spend regretting who you were is a moment stolen from becoming who you are meant to be. There is a fundamental misunderstanding about wholeness that keeps most men trapped in cycles of self-improvement that never actually improve anything. They believe wholeness means adding more, becoming more, achieving more. They think they need to build a better version of themselves on top of the broken foundation. But Jung understood wholeness comes from integration, not addition. You do not need to become someone new. You need to gather all the parts of yourself you have scattered through years of shame, fear, and avoidance. The immature man says he is broken and must be fixed. He sees himself as a problem to be solved, a project to be completed, a mess to be cleaned. This perspective creates endless war within the psyche because you cannot fix something by hating it. You cannot shame yourself into discipline. You cannot punish yourself into productivity. The mature man says something entirely different. He says he is whole, but has forgotten. He recognizes that everything he needs already exists within him, waiting to be remembered, reclaimed, integrated. This shift from fixing to remembering changes everything about how you approach discipline. You stop seeing it as something you must force upon yourself and begin seeing it as something you are returning to, like coming home after years of wandering. The disciplined self is not a stranger you must become, but a part of you that went into exile and is ready to return. He has been keeping your place at the table, maintaining your potential, while you explored what it meant to live without it. Psychological architecture is not a metaphor. It is the actual structure of your inner world, the way you organize your thoughts, emotions, priorities, and actions. When this architecture is chaotic, when rooms are sealed off, when foundations are cracked, when load-bearing walls are compromised, everything in your life reflects this disorder. You feel scattered, inconsistent, unreliable to yourself. You make decisions from different parts of yourself that do not communicate with each other, creating a life full of contradiction and conflict. Discipline is the restoration of this architecture. It is the process of opening sealed rooms, repairing foundations, establishing clear pathways between different aspects of yourself. When your inner house is in order, your outer life naturally follows suit. You stop needing to remember to be disciplined, because discipline becomes the natural expression of internal alignment. Your morning routine is not something you force yourself to do, but something that emerges from the restored order of your psyche. But this restoration requires you to acknowledge something most men spend their entire lives avoiding. You must admit that the chaos was not random. You created it, maintained it, even defended it, because it served a purpose. Chaos allowed you to avoid responsibility. If everything was always in disarray, you could never be held accountable for not building something meaningful. If you were always in crisis, you could never be expected to show up consistently. The chaos was not your enemy. It was your excuse. Letting go of that excuse feels like death, because in a way, it is. When you choose discipline, you are choosing to kill the version of yourself who always had a reason why today was not the day. You are ending the life of the man who collected potential like coins he never spent. You are burying the identity that kept you safe from the possibility of giving everything and still failing. This death is necessary, sacred, transformative. But it is still death, and it must be grieved. The grief is not for the life you lived, but for the life you did not live while you were busy protecting yourself from it. It is for the mornings you slept through, the projects you abandoned, the version of yourself you kept postponing. This grief is not weakness. It is the beginning of strength, because it means you are finally telling the truth about what your avoidance has cost you. Only when you feel the full weight of that cost can you make the decision to stop paying it. Identity precedes behavior. This is the law that governs all lasting change. You cannot sustainably act in ways that contradict who you believe yourself to be. Your psyche will always find ways to return you to consistency with your self-image, even if that self-image is limiting or destructive. This is why so many attempts at discipline fail. People try to change their behavior while maintaining the same identity, creating an unsustainable tension that eventually snaps back to baseline. The man who sees himself as naturally lazy will always return to laziness, no matter how many productivity systems he tries. The man who identifies as someone who never finishes things will always find a way to abandon projects before completion. The man who believes he lacks willpower will always discover evidence to support that belief. These are not character flaws. They are identity structures, and they are far more powerful than any amount of motivation or determination. But here is the revolutionary truth. Identity is not fixed. It is a story you tell yourself so consistently that you mistake it for fact. You have been telling yourself the story of an undisciplined man for so long that you believe it is who you are rather than who you have practiced being. This distinction is everything. Who you are is eternal, unchangeable, the pure potential that existed before any story was written. Who you have practiced being is just repetition, habit, a groove worn into your psyche by walking the same path over and over. New paths can be walked. New grooves can be worn. New stories can be told. But first, you must stop defending the old story as if your life depends on it. You must be willing to exist in the space between who you were and who you are becoming, the liminal zone where identity is fluid and anything is possible. This space is uncomfortable because you are neither your old self nor your new self. You are pure potential, unformed, undefined, unlimited. In this space, discipline is not about forcing yourself to do things. It is about practicing being the person who naturally does them. Every morning you wake up on time, you are practicing being someone who honors the morning. Every workout you complete, you are practicing being someone who respects their body. Every promise you keep to yourself, you are practicing being someone whose word means something. These are not just actions. They are identity rehearsals. And with enough rehearsal, the performance becomes reality. The internal order you establish through discipline creates a resonance that extends far beyond your personal life. When a man has integrated his scattered parts, when his inner architecture is sound, when his identity is aligned with his actions, he becomes a stabilizing force in a chaotic world. Others feel this without understanding it. They sense the solidness, the reliability, the quiet strength of someone who has stopped fighting himself and started building himself. This is not about becoming perfect or never struggling again. Integration does not mean the elimination of all conflict or challenge. It means that when conflict arises, you meet it as a whole person rather than a collection of warring fragments. When challenge appears, you face it with all of your resources available rather than half of them tied up in internal civil war. When discipline is required, it flows from your center rather than being imposed from outside. The man you are becoming does not need motivation because he has something better. He has alignment, congruence, integration. He has remembered who he is beneath all the stories of who he should be or could have been. He has forgiven himself for the years of wandering and returned home to his own potential. From this place, discipline is not a struggle, but a celebration, a daily opportunity to express the order he has restored within himself.